Hello everyone and welcome to this video. I'm the Hoarding Puffin and it's December. I don't know if you can tell. I did put up Christmas lights, but it is in fact December and that means I am late. Late to what, you might ask? I am late to Aschenbrödel season. If you have no idea what the ever-loving hell Aschenbrödel season is, well, you've clicked onto the right video. So please go ahead, grab yourself a tea or a cocoa or coffee, just a wintry beverage of choice, grab yourself a holiday snack and enjoy and lean back and listen to me as I tell you all about the Czech-German Cinderella movie that like half of Europe decided is just the peak of Christmas movies. First things first, obviously when I say Europe, I'm not referring to the entire continent of Europe. I am aware that Europe is not a country. It's just easier to say. I'm mainly referring to the Czech Republic, Germany, Slovakia, Norway, Spain, Austria, and the UK. Apparently, the film also had releases in the United Arab Emirates and in the Philippines and Japan, which I didn't know until I did some in-depth research for this video. So that was really fun to find out. But just for the purposes of this video, I am going to focus on the European aspect on it simply because I could not find information on the non-European side of it, how popular it is or isn't in other countries. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get going. Also, I will have my script on my phone. So if I'm looking down, I'm reading something off, that's what I'm doing, because there is a lot to get through. So, drei Haselnüsse für Aschenbrödel or tri oryszki pro popelku, I think is how you say it. I apologize to anyone who speaks Czech. I do not. Or in English, 3 wishes or 3 hazelnuts for Cinderella is this, unironically, I'm not using this word lightly, this iconic piece of European media. Obviously, it is a Cinderella story. It tells the story of Cinderella, but not the one you might be familiar with. And by that, I don't mean it in the way that people go like, oh, the Grimm version is different from the Disney version. This version is also very distinctly different from the Grimm version. So no chopped off feet. Instead of a fairy godmother or a magical tree on the grave of Cinderella's mother, there are 3 magical hazelnuts, and there's just like this host of different things that are distinct to this version of the story, and those come largely from the Czech version of the story, which I will get into in a little bit. So the evil stepmother wants to marry off her daughter Dora to a nobleman, ideally to the prince, and so when the royal family makes a stop at her estate, she kind of makes a whole big show and invites herself to the royal ball. This character is so complicated because obviously she is genuinely evil and vile, and she even is vile towards her own daughter. After this whole scene is done, there's this bit where she goes like, oh, well, maybe you might attract a nobleman's attention. You might even attract the attention of the prince. And Dora, being a young girl, starts giggling, and her mother's response is just, what? You're not that ugly. This woman is vile, but also she is kind of iconic in her own way. She has a little bit of a accidental drag queen vibe to me, which definitely has to do with the fact that she has a very weird big headpiece. But also there's just something. I love her. She is so vile, and she gaslight gatekeep girl bosses, essentially, actually just gaslights her way into a royal ball. So that happens. And whilst all of this is happening, Aschenbrödel, by the way, I will be calling her by her German name because I physically cannot bear calling her Cinderella. This specific version just is Aschenbrödel. She's distinct for me from other versions. So Aschenbrödel, meanwhile, is in the forest. She's snuck out and she's going on a little hike with her horse, and she encounters these 3 men on a hunt. And she disrupts their hunt. She tosses snowballs at them. She has them chase her, and then she steals one of their horses. It's a whole thing, and they are really sort of caught between amazement and annoyance that a quote-unquote little girl tricked them. And those three men are the prince and his two best friends. So because Dora and her mother are now attending a ball, the in German he's called Winzek. I'm not sure if he's called that in other versions, but the chauffeur and one of the servants of the estate is obviously sent out to get fabrics. And when he encounters Aschenbrödel, he asks her if he should bring her anything. And she replies with a very humble, bring me whatever you come across. And whatever he comes across ends up being 3 hazelnuts. And these hazelnuts end up being magical. Aschenbrödel actually discovers this completely by accident. She drops one of the hazelnuts to the floor in her secret hideaway, and it splits open and clothing falls out. Specifically, a masculine hunting outfit. I've not said this before, but Aschenbrödel kind of from the beginning of the film is characterized to us as someone who engages in both feminine and masculine associated activities. There's this moment in the first 10 minutes of the film where the stepmother has a speech towards Aschenbrödel and goes the days are over when your father took you hunting with a crossbow and took you riding in the woods as if you were a boy. And then later in the film, Aschenbrödel sits in her hideaway again and she sort of reminisces about her parents, and she says, my father always used to say I would ride on my own to my first ball like a hussar, and my mother promised to sew me a pink ball gown with a veil. So the entire film tells us that she engages and always has engaged and has been socialized in this way in both feminine and masculine activities. She puts on these masculine, distinctly masculine hunting clothes, and she sort of tucks her hair into her hat, and she goes out and she joins a royal hunt where she of course meets the prince again. And also she shoots better than any of the men, and the prince is very impressed. We're calling it impressed for now. But yeah, she even taunts them and goes oh, even a little girl could do this, kind of calling back to the fact that they called her a little girl earlier. But whilst as a viewer it's very obvious that this is a woman cross-dressing, in universe, within the story, nobody is registering that this is a woman. They fully think okay, this is a young man. So just keep that in mind as a little tidbit. But yeah, at this point, she and the prince are developing this connection that it's something. It's just something for now. But Aschenbrödel is developing a bit of a crush. The prince is developing a little something. We don't really know what just yet. So, side note, this version of Cinderella is who I wanted to be as a child. I wanted to be Aschenbrödel as a hunter. How the hell did it take me 20 plus years to figure out I was trans and gay? How? So the ball approaches, and Aschenbrödel decides to use the second hazelnut, which gives her this gorgeous silver, pink, blue ball gown that also comes with a veil and a cape. So in the end, Aschenbrödel rides to the ball herself in a pink gown with a veil, much like her parents prophesied, which is it's just so neat, it's so cute. And at the ball, meanwhile, the prince has danced with woman after woman, and he's had it up to here. There's this great moment. So the reason this ball is being held is because the king is fed up with the prince's antics, and he wants to marry him off to just any woman because he thinks that will tame the prince. And the prince is fed up, and he yells out this line I'd rather be, what is he saying? I'd rather be cutting down trees. And the king goes, okay, a man a word, get started. So the prince storms out of the ballroom, and he storms past Aschenbrödel, and she goes oh, thank you for the friendly greeting. She completely stops him in his tracks, and he forgets all about the trees, and they dance. And he is falling in love with this mystery woman that is wearing a pink veil, and he's never seen her before. She looks completely different from any other woman at this ball because she's dressed very distinctly in pastel colors. Everyone is in jewel tones. She is something special. And he crushes on her, and as they dance, of course, he asks her to marry him. And she says no. Actually, specifically, he goes I want to announce that I'm gonna get married to you. And she goes like, you forgot to ask your bride-to-be if she wants to marry you. And he goes like, you would say no to me? And she goes like, I don't know. I guess that would be a scandal. Like I love her so much. She is in love with the prince at this point, but she just doesn't want him to marry her without knowing who she really is. So she gives him a riddle to guess that outlines all of her identities so far. So the girl in the woods, the huntsman, and the princess at the ball. The prince doesn't know the answer. She leaves. He follows her. And then the rest is pretty standard for a Cinderella story. Shoe is lost. Prince makes every girl try it on. The stepmother tries to make it seem like her daughter is the mystery princess. Ultimately, she fails in this. And in the end, Aschenbrödel uses her last hazelnut and it procures a wedding dress. And the prince realizes the answers to the riddle, asks her to marry him again, and she says yes. This movie is based on O Popelce, a Bohemian version of the Cinderella story, attributed to a writer called Božena Němcová. I really hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. And the script was written by František Pavlíček, I think. I apologize, Czech people. I'm really trying. So František was actually a Czech writer who, due to his involvement with the Prague Spring, an effort to liberate and democratize Czechoslovakia, was forced to stop working in any like cultural office or profession. He was essentially blacklisted. And the film script was therefore handled under a pseudonym, especially because this film was really feminist for the time. And the countries producing it, which was the DDR, which is Eastern Germany at the time, because Germany was split at the time, and obviously Czechoslovakia. It was a co-production between these two countries. And so part of the cast was also German and part of it was Czech. And then the same is also true for anyone behind the camera. So there, and for the locations. So some of it was filmed in Czechoslovakia and some of it was filmed in Germany. And in each country, then there was a dubbed version or like a half-dubbed version essentially released. And this was just one of many such co-productions. There are a ton of fairy tale movies that are German-Czech co-productions that are like absolutely iconic pieces of media in these parts of Europe in their own right. So we've covered what the story is about, but you might be wondering, why and how is this a Christmas movie? You said this was Europe's favorite Christmas movie. Snow. The answer is snow. The film was originally supposed to be set in the springtime, and then spontaneously they decided to set it in winter. There's a ton of snow, and that obviously gives it a very wintry feel because everything is covered in snow. And I think a lot of the snow ended up being fake snow because they didn't have enough snow. But the point is, the entire film has all of these gorgeous snow-covered forests and snow-covered landscapes, and that just kind of, that mixed with it just being aired a lot in winter because it shows a winter season, kind of over time manifested it as a Christmas movie. So yeah, really it's because of tradition. It became tradition to air this movie in the wintertime. And then it just over time got associated with the Christmas season specifically. In the Czech Republic, it aired with the Czech audio, wherein the German-speaking actors were dubbed over. In Germany, it was the same, but reverse. And I believe that in Norway, where also it was established very much as a Christmas movie, it is sort of, I think it's aired with a narrator just talking over it in doing all of the parts, but it's just one narrator. That's what I've heard. There are also Arab, Japanese, and even an English dub, but those seem to be like extremely obscure, hard to track down. I tried and failed. But at any rate, in many countries, it just became tradition to watch these either before or during Christmas because it was a wintry, snowy movie, and that's when it was aired. I do know that for Germany, every year there is a literal Aschenbrödel calendar that gets published like in November, and it shows you like every date, every possible TV station airs this movie in the time from November to January. Germany takes their Aschenbrödel very, very seriously. Then, like I said, in Norway, this film also has a similar importance to the one it has in Germany. And so a remake was ordered. Again, I apologize, Norwegian people. I believe it is pronounced Tre Natter til Askepott. And it is a more modernized take on the story, but it's still set historically. Modernized more in values. It's not set in the modern times. And actually, controversially, I like that version better than the original. I love the original. I do prefer the new take, actually. I grew up with the original. I love it. I just think that the 2021 remake takes everything that I love about the story and just improves on it. For example, it gives Dora more character. Dora in the original is just a stereotypical mean stepsister. She giggles, she hates Aschenbrödel, and that's her entire character. But in the new film, they actually expand on her. They actually give her some personality. And they also lean into like how she also suffers under her own mother, who is so extremely ambitious and cruel to her as well. And it's just, I don't know, it leans more into that angle of self-worth. The same is true for the entire movie, actually. The last hazelnut in this version doesn't transform into a wedding dress. It actually returns Askepott into her original self with her, pauper style clothing, which I really like. She also gets to do some more like heroic stuff rather than being just a girl tricking men. Like she literally saves the prince's life. And I do think it is a good role model for children watching it. Though I know a lot of people took issue with that change. Also, another thing is that this film took all of the queer undertones of the original and just made them so much more pronounced. Aschenbrödel in the 70s version, which itself is set further in the past, I'm assuming it's meant to be set in the anywhere between the 1820s and 1870s, based on when the author of the base story Opelse lived. That version is already fairly queer and definitely has Aschenbrödel as a feminist main character. She's self-reliant, she's confident, and even though she's being abused by her family, she has a sense of self-worth and she doesn't just cower in a corner. She is a character who absolutely stands her ground, and she does so frequently. And she finds all of these small acts of rebellion in her state of almost captivity in her circumstances. And of course, she engages, like I said, in both masculine and feminine associated activities. And she literally is cross-dressing in part of the movie. So, yeah, I don't know. The masculine side of her is not treated as a disguise, but more as a part of who she is. Like, when the prince solves her riddle, he literally says, "You were that marvelous hunter," not "you were dressed up as that hunter. You are the hunter." Actually, I'm just going to focus a little bit more on this hunting scene. In the original, there's this announcement that whoever shoots a bird of prey from the sky first will be rewarded with a ring from the royal treasury. This is a prize set out by the king, not the prince, though the prince is the one to put it onto Aschenbrödel's finger when she, of course, wins the competition. In the 2021 remake, the scene goes a bit differently. So the ring is very explicitly shown to be the ring the king wants the prince to propose to his future wife with. The prince runs off with his two best friends and they go hunting. And unlike in the original, this isn't a big hunting party. It's just 3 dudes in the snow. They're also shooting doves, not birds of prey. And the ring is not ever brought up as a prize. This is important. The ring is not ever brought up as a prize. They're just hunting for the fun of it. And then Aschenbrödel shows up. She shoots best anyways. And her and the prince talk. And he suddenly insists she must have a prize. She must have the ring. And again, it is not set out as a prize beforehand. The prince just sees a young man, and in this version, I need to stress this, in this version, Aschenbrödel is a lot more cross-dressed. She even has like a little fake beard on, and she actually also lowers her voice, which she doesn't do in the original, so she is actively acting as a man in this scene. And she shoots best. The prince sees this young man and gives him, supposedly, his engagement ring. The royal engagement ring. Give me a fucking heterosexual explanation for that. Another change that the 2021 movie does is that the two best friends of the prince actually end up as a couple in the end, and they kiss. They sort of come across as they might be a little bit queer in the original, but I couldn't find any concrete proof that that was an intentional writing choice. I found some vague posts from 2008 that really are more speculation. It's not plot relevant in either version of the film, but it's just sweet. And it's a through line in the entire 2021 film as a sort of background story. And apparently it was cut out of a lot of cinematic releases, which I didn't know this until I was researching. Don't you love it when in the fucking 2020s, gay kisses of background characters still get cut out of movies? Don't you just love that? Big sarcasm sign for anyone who's not taking it. The 2021 movie definitely leans into the queer theming, but I will say, even if we completely disregard all of the changes, the original movie from the 70s is actually plenty queer. And not just because the Cinderella character cross-dresses and engages in traditionally masculine activities. That in itself is not an inherently queer thing. But the story kind of mimics an ugly duckling type of story. You know, the fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen, who was very much a disaster of a bisexual. A story in which a person starts out not being able to be appreciated for their true identity until they find the people with whom they cannot only embrace but celebrate this identity. And identity and multiple facets of identity are this leading motif in the story. So I don't think it's unreasonable to see these as similarities to queer discovery stories. Before anyone gets mad at me, and I know they will, because I know how the traditionalists are about this film, and I have to deal with this every time I bring up this movie in the context of queerness. But obviously, this movie, the 1970s original movie, was not written with the explicit intent of making this a queer story. Just as much as it wasn't written to be set in winter. It just turned out to be shot in winter and in the snow. And it just turned out to have a lot of themes and sub-messaging and subtext that read as queer. If these undertones had not been present in the original, I don't know if the Norwegian remake would have picked up on them and broadened them or not. Maybe they would have. There's really no way to say. But the fact is, whether you are watching the 1973 original or the 2021 remake, whether you choose to interpret the film as queer or not, it definitely has queer and it has feminist messaging. And this message of empowerment that is incredibly strong. And I don't know. It's not a queer movie, but it is definitely a queer movie. You get what I'm saying. If you're queer, you know exactly what I mean. I don't know what the purpose of this video really was. I think the purpose of this video was I wanted to talk about this film because I find it so fascinating that this piece of media was produced as this bicultural thing. I find it so heartwarming that it's, still so popular. All of these years later, popular enough to get a big production money, a big, well-produced and not low budget, which the original definitely was, remake that, I know it's controversial, but a lot of people do really, really like the remake as well. So, I don't know, the legacy of this, I think, is really cool because it is a film that was produced in politically tense times. The screenplay was written by someone who was blacklisted by his government for his politically progressive views. It was produced in 2 languages by a bicultural crew in several countries. It was filmed in several different countries with a bicultural crew and cast. It is based on the Bohemian version of the story, written by a female writer. I don't know. I think it's cool, but maybe I'm just being too much of a cultural anthropologist and too much of a nerd about media history. That's entirely possible, but also if this video is boring and uninteresting, you've probably clicked off the video anyway. If you are still here, first of all, thank you. Thank you for sitting through my like easily probably half-hour rant info dump thing on Aschenbrödel. And if you are still here, even though I've told you a lot about this film already, please try and check it out. This will be easiest if you speak German or Czech, but English dubs and subs of the original movie are out there. I have been told this. I have seen this. I couldn't tell you where, because I've only seen it on other people's accounts, but it does exist, theoretically. And there definitely is an English dub of the 2021 movie, and it's a well-made dub. I do know this for a fact. But yeah, just if you want to switch up, you know, your rotation of holiday movies, maybe give this one a try, either version of it. And let me know what you think, what you thought of this video, what you think of this, like, story. I don't know what your thoughts are on biculturalism. If you did grow up with the original version of the movie, let me know what you think about it. About the remake, have you watched the remake? Are you one of the people that go like, "Grr, remake bad, inherently, nothing good about the remake"? Or are you a person like me who's like, actually, the remake's actually really good, even though I still really love the original? Just, yeah. If you are from a country where it is like Christmas season tradition to watch this film in the days leading up to the holidays, have you watched it already? Do you watch it regularly, or are you like, this is a tradition but I don't partake? Just let me know all of your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I've been doing a lot of like cultural info dump videos recently, but I promise more sewing and crafting and puppetry videos are gonna come in the new year. And yeah, just thank you for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed this. Yeah, happy holidays, happy winter holidays of your choosing if you celebrate. If not, just have a nice calm December, and if I don't upload another video before then, get safely into the new year. Let's hope it's better than this one.